They say greed is a hungry demon. But on the steel rails of the Wild West, greed didn't just feast on money, it feasted on souls. This is the story of a train robbery that wasn't just about gold and glory. It was about a path paved in blood, a path that led to a confrontation between two men, one driven by insatiable avarice and the other by a thirst for vengeance. This is the story of the Butcher's Express. The late 19th century was a time of iron horses and untamed wilderness. The railroad was the lifeblood of America, a symbol of progress, and a lifeline connecting bustling cities to isolated frontier towns. But it was also a magnet for a new breed of outlaws, men who saw an opportunity for wealth beyond their wildest dreams. Stories of trains carrying immense fortunes in gold, silver, and payroll spread like wildfire, turning every mile of track into a potential ambush site. While many gangs saw these trains as easy targets, one group elevated robbery to an art form of brutality. They were known as the Blackwood Gang, led by a man named Silas Blackwood, a name that sent shivers down the spines of railroad workers and lawmen alike. He was a monster in human form, a man who earned his chilling nickname, the Butcher, not just for the way he carved up banks but for the blood he left behind. Silas believed that a trail of carnage was the best way to ensure silence, a brutal philosophy that separated him from every other outlaw in the West. His next target was a legend in itself, the Union Pacific Train number 17. This train, a beast of steel and steam, was rumored to be carrying the largest shipment of gold and silver in the history of the Western Territories, a treasure worth over $500,000. For Silas Blackwood, this wasn't just a score, it was a legacy. But Silas didn't know that on that train, another man was waiting for him. His name was Elias Vance, a former cavalry scout with nothing left to lose. He wasn't there for the gold, he was there for a debt of blood. Silas Blackwood had murdered Elias's family years ago, and fate had brought them together on a collision course. This was no ordinary train journey. It was a ticking time bomb hurtling through the night. A clash between two opposing forces, one driven by boundless greed and the other by a cold, burning desire for revenge. The question isn't whether the train would be robbed. The question is who would walk away when the carnage was over and what would be left of the souls on board. The night train, a behemoth of steel and steam, rumbled through the canyons, its rhythmic clatter a deceptive lullaby. Elias Vance, his eyes sharp and weary, patrolled the narrow corridors. He knew the kind of monsters the world held, and Silas Blackwood was the worst of them. Elias wasn't here for the riches. The gold was a distraction, a shiny lure for lesser men. His mission was singular, to meet the devil on his own terms. The ambush came without warning. A small charge of dynamite, strategically placed on the tracks ahead, brought the train to a screeching halt. The whistle shrieked, a final desperate scream. Before the echo faded, men on horseback, a black tide of a dozen riders, swarmed the halted cars. Gunfire erupted, a chaotic symphony of violence. Elias drew his pistol, a well-oiled extension of his hand. He took cover behind a stack of crates, returning fire with deadly precision. He wasn't aiming to wound. He was aiming to kill. The first challenge was a desperate fight in the baggage car. Elias moved with the grace of a ghost, his mind a steel trap of cavalry tactics. He used the maze of trunks and bags to his advantage, picking off one outlaw after another. He took a bullet to his shoulder, a searing pain that he barely registered, a familiar sting from a life of war. He disabled 5 of Silas's men before the gang finally broke through to the main passenger cars. The screams began then, a horrifying sound that fueled his fire. Silas Blackwood, with a terrifying calm, strode through the train. He was a man with cold, calculating eyes, a predator surveying his prey. He reached the secure bullion car where the real prize was kept. His men began to saw through the steel door, a high-pitched, grating sound that felt like it was tearing the very fabric of the night. But Silas, a man of brutal efficiency, tired of waiting. With a single explosive charge, he blew the door off its hinges. The sight of the gold and silver within caused the gang's eyes to glow with an inhuman greed. This was the moment the robbery turned into a massacre. Silas, seeing the stunned and terrified faces of the passengers, gave a chilling order. No witnesses. The outlaws, drunk on the scent of gold, obeyed without hesitation. They began shooting men, women, and children. Elias, hearing the gunshots, his heart a stone of cold fury, raced forward. He fought his way through the carnage, the blood on the floor of the train a testament to Silas's depravity. Elias was a one-man army, but he was losing ground. Silas was now a short distance away, supervising the loading of the loot. Elias had to make a choice. He couldn't save everyone. He had to stop Silas in this train of death. In a desperate move, he detached the final 2 passenger cars, sacrificing them to save the lives of those in the front. The train jerked violently as the 2 parts separated, leaving a trail of death behind. This was the climax. Elias finally confronted Silas, not in the passenger car but in the heart of the beast, the engine room. Steam hissed, pistons slammed, and the air was thick with the scent of coal and fear. The 2 men stood face to face, the weight of their past hanging heavy in the air. "You're a long way from home, Vance," Silas sneered, his hand hovering over his holster. "Should have stayed there." "You took my home," Elias said, his voice a low growl. "You took my wife, my son, and you didn't even remember their faces." A flash of recognition, a flicker of cold amusement crossed Silas's eyes. "Oh, the homestead outside of Cheyenne. That was business. Nothing personal." The twist, Elias let out a bitter laugh. "It was personal, Silas. And I have a secret you'll take to your grave." Elias had been working on the train as more than just a guard. The Union Pacific Railroad, fearing a robbery of this scale, had rigged the bullion car with an explosive. The detonator was not a simple switch. It was tied to the very cargo that Silas was now greedily loading. Elias had set a timer, a final, lethal trap. Silas's eyes widened as the realization dawned on him. The gold was a bomb, and the butcher was about to become the butcher's meat. The final shootout erupted, not for gold, but for survival. Elias was fighting to get to the detonator, to stop the explosion he had himself set, knowing the gold would be lost forever. Silas, in his blind rage, fought to kill the man who had outsmarted him, to take back the treasure that was about to disappear. The train hurtled forward, a moving battlefield, a crucible of greed and revenge, with only one man knowing the true nature of the prize. The final confrontation wasn't a classic shootout but a brutal, desperate struggle. Elias and Silas, locked in a ferocious embrace, fought on the roof of the hurtling train. The wind howled, threatening to tear them from the steel. Silas, blinded by rage and the fear of losing his prize, tried to strangle Elias. But Elias had a single goal: to reach the detonator in the bullion car. He ducked, twisted, and drove his knee into Silas's gut. They tumbled and slid across the roof, each man a reflection of the other's desperation. Elias finally broke free, scrambling towards the back. But Silas was faster. He caught up, a wild look in his eyes, and a brutal fist came down on Elias's head, knocking him to his knees. "The gold is mine," Silas roared, his voice swallowed by the wind. As he lunged for the bullion car door, Elias, with one last burst of strength, grabbed the very safe Silas was trying to open. With a powerful shove, he sent the heavy box sliding across the roof, straight into Silas's legs. The butcher went down. He looked up at Elias, not with fear, but with an insane, incomprehensible fury. Elias didn't hesitate. He kicked Silas's legs, sending the outlaw tumbling off the side of the train. The last thing they heard was Silas's scream, a high-pitched cry that was cut short by the crunch of steel on flesh. The butcher died under the wheels of the very train he had sought to rob, his life ending exactly as his victims had. Elias, with a groan of pain and relief, reached the detonator just in time. The gold was safe for now. The train finally slowed to a halt, a silent monument to the violence it had witnessed. When the authorities arrived, they found a train car full of dead outlaws and a lone, wounded man standing over the gold. But the story of the Butcher's Express didn't end there. They say the gold was eventually recovered, but the train itself became a legend. It was a scar on the land, a ghost story whispered in saloons and around campfires. Elias Vance disappeared, a man who had gotten his revenge but found no peace. He was a hero to some, a killer to others, a figure forever defined by the blood on the tracks. This was more than a story about a train robbery, it was a testament to the brutal truth of the Wild West. Greed didn't just end in carnage, it demanded it. And as for the souls lost that night, they were forgotten. Their only legacy a chilling reminder that on those iron rails, some journeys were destined to end in death. If you want to hear more untold stories of the Wild West, from legendary gunfighters to forgotten heroes, subscribe and hit the notification bell. What's your favorite story of a Wild West outlaw? Let me know in the comments below.